Welcome, everybody, to episode number 28 of Discussions with the Pros. Can't believe we're number 28. Tonight, we have a very interesting discussion because this line of products, Penelope Bourbon, was introduced to us by one of our new friends. So, through the power of the internet, social media, we met Ted Ansink from Tennessee. And Ted asked us if we would like to interview the people who make Penelope Bourbon from his long relationship with them. He says that they make really good stuff. So one thing that's interesting here for me is that this is, I think, only our second time that we are interviewing a company with which I was not familiar before we started doing these interviews. So that's interesting to me. That this will be fun. I'd like everybody, first of all, just to welcome to say hello to Michael and Daniel from Penelope Bourbon. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. We appreciate it.
No, it's our pleasure. And so, Eric, if you can do me a favor and mute everybody except for you, me, Daniel, and Michael. And I'd like everybody to notice in the chat, we have put the order of the tasting. We're starting off with a 4-grain, then we're going to barrel strength, then toasted 1, and then toasted 2. So that is the order with which we are doing things. Michael, where are you calling in from tonight?
Well, so Danny and I, we are from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey.
What exit?
We're really, actually, we're known for our bourbon. So it's we're excited to be here. We're bringing it live.
Wonderful. So why don't you tell us, let's get started with the first drink. We got to get through 4 drinks and all these interviews here. Tell us what is the first thing that we're going to be drinking here, the 4-grain bourbon. What is in it? How is it aged? Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So this was our starting expression. Danny and I, just to kind of get it all right out there. Penelope, you're probably going to hear, we just put her to bed. That's why I was about 5 minutes late. She's my 2.5-year-old daughter. And so my wife and I, we were trying to have kids for a long time, really long time. Never got the memo. When you get a little bit older, it's tricky. And when we finally, we always said if we had a girl, we were, going to name her Penelope. And, when we found out we were having a girl, it just, mixed emotions, just things were happening. And so we went, and that was the starting expression. And, for this one, I wanted to make something approachable, really easy sipping. So we went with a kind of a unique 4-grain mash from MGP. And so what we did was we blend basically on the particular, our barrels are getting older. So, when we first started, they were all 2-year. Now they're at 33 months, which for us is like ancient. So we're basically, we're blending a 21% rye bourbon from MGP, a 45% wheat, and a 99% corn. Each of those mashes has malted barley. So by default, you have
that's the 4-grain. Yeah, so that's the 4-grain there. Okay. And how did you come up with that particular mash bill?
I'll be honest with you folks, Danny, we could talk about this all day long. I don't come from this space. I came from Silicon Valley. Danny's an engineer. He used to build bridges. And so we loved bourbon though. That was it. We really loved bourbon. We had our pours. Danny and I were next door neighbors growing up our whole life. And so when I cold called MGP, literally, when I find out, I said, you know what, Penelope Bourbon, God, it had such a good ring to it. There's so much, whiskey's about guns, Velcro, dip, bullshit. I said, this is just, I don't know, it just was personal to me. I said, we don't have a 100-year story, but this is us. I think we can just write our own story as we're building the company and going, starting with, calling MGP from a cold call. And
then, so then in order to get something like this to bottle, okay, that the 4-grain to bottle. So, how was that decision made that this particular mash bill would be something that you would bottle?
Well, for us, Danny loves corn bourbon. And he also loves the sweeter profiles from the 45 wheat. And so we looked at all different age statements. And, for us in the beginning, we could only, we wanted to start young. We felt that we wanted to build a brand on younger juice and then backfill our inventory and slowly get older and older with each batch. And it's a marathon. Like, this isn't going to happen overnight. And I liked rye. And so, MGP doesn't say anything in these meetings, and we were such novices. It was like deer in headlights, and we just started putting the two together, and we said, wow, it's got an interesting profile.
You know,
I don't know if I'm,
I was going to say, the day we showed up at MGP, I mean, they just had a table full of their mash bills, different years, different mash bills. Like Mike said, we were kind of like a deer in headlights. We don't come from the space. You know, we were really just like bourbon enthusiasts. We knew what we liked to taste, and we sat down at that table and we just started tasting through these mash bills. And, you know, he was tasting through, I was tasting through, and I liked, like he said, the corns and the wheats. He was liking some of the rye mash bills. So we basically took what we all liked and we put it together and we started blending them together. And that's when like a light went off. And I remember the second we made that blend, it was like, we both looked at each other after we tasted it and we're like, oh, you know, like, like that is way different. Something just clicked and we didn't look back from there. I mean, that's still the same 3 mash bills that we use in all of our
from
products.
literally that first meeting to this day. Every product we have is that same mash bill. We did go in with the strategy. I said, everybody's doing 90 and 100 proof. We got a lot of flack for doing 80. I said, whatever everyone else is doing, I want to do the polar opposite. I said, we're not going to switch a Jim Beam consumer. We're not going to switch a Jack Daniels consumer. However, we can switch a Basil Hayden consumer. So if we come in at a more competitive price point on Basil, I bet we can get some of that market share. You know, I'm talking like Basil's got tons, we're small. I said, even if it's just one at a time, that's fine. And we launched in New Jersey. Danny and I were selling it from our car, March 2019. And, you know, fast forward.
Is that legal? I mean, I know it's Jersey, but is that legal?
Yeah, it took us a while to get our permits.
I'm sure it did.
State.
But by the way, your website's great. I like how your website talks about your team. Okay, so you mentioned on the website, you know, that the juice is from MGP, that you blend it at Castle and Key in Kentucky, and that you've engaged Speyside Cooperage to help with your cask. Okay, how did you decide on that particular team, on those particular, you know, areas of expertise to help you bring this to market?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're just 2 guys from New Jersey. And we felt that we liked the flavor profile. MGP makes amazing whiskey. And, you know, I think from a marketability perspective, I kind of looked at what Pinhook had done with Castle and Key. I knew you know, to be fully transparent, Danny and I ran batch 1 and it was a total monumental disaster. Monumental disaster. We learned really quickly that when you're contract bottling, you got to make sure the contract bottler cleans their bottling lines after their last run. So we had a really nice jalapeno tequila bourbon for batch 1 because they ran a jalapeno vodka or tequila before ours. And, you know, that was our first experience. We were so excited to get that first bottle. We sipped it and I go, Danny, this tastes like a margarita. And, you know, we learned really quickly. We said, whoa, like I remember we looked, we go, we're way out of our league here, man. What are we doing? We just lost a lot of stuff, like just trusting that partner. So I said, you know what, that's it. We didn't know it. I saw Marianne Eves had recently left Castle and Key. I sent her a cold email. I said, hey, you know, we're Mike. I'm trying to build this business and I'd love to pick your brain. And she goes, next time you're in Kentucky, we'll go to dinner. A couple weeks later, we were down there for our second batch because our first one was kind of a flop, obviously. And she introduced us. I said, I'd love to meet the folks at Castle and Key. She had just left and she introduced us and they've been a great partner of ours ever since. Okay,
so let me make sure that I understood something that you said. All of your bottles essentially have the same ratio of the 4 grains in them. Is that true? Is that what you said? I want to make sure.
Well, we use the same 3 mash bills.
Okay.
MGP.
But you might have different ratios in there.
Different ratios,
okay.
You know, different age statements, things like that. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about the barrels.
Danny, why don't I turn to you? That's your forte.
Yeah. I mean, so, you know, the first couple of batches, we were just kind of learning about these mash bills that we were getting out of MGP, different warehouses, even different cooperages. We were getting those mash bills in different barrel types, like Independent Stave, Speyside. You know, we started leaning towards Speyside a little more on the actual barrel, but what we ended up doing is when we bring them in, we used to just dump the mash bills into tanks and blend them together. after each mash bill is in a tank. What we've evolved to do is we go through each barrel individually now and sample it. So, you know, our batch sizes have been growing and growing and growing. Our first batch was 6 barrels, 12, 15, 21. You know, we're up to, you know, we're doing about 90 barrel batches now. And that's kind of like the sweet spot, and that we'd like to like continue to do that, because that's really the spot where you can go through each barrel and taste it and figure out if it goes in that batch or if it doesn't go in that batch. Because at that size, even a handful of barrels, 1, 2, 3 barrels that are off profile will ruin the batch. And we learned that in batch 2. After the jalapeno issue, we figured out that in batch 2 that 1 barrel can throw off the blend.
That's hilarious. I mean, it's like, who would have thought that that would be an issue that you'd have to address?
But through this process, again, Mike cold emailed Speyside basically to like their info email address, and we from there they got back to us, and we created a really great relationship with one of the people over there, Rob Crandall, who is literally he's an ex-Som, or not ex-Som, but he was a Som for a while, so he's got the understanding of palate and where things originate from, but he is like an encyclopedia of everything distilled spirit and wine and wood. He can tell you like where this piece of wood came from in the world, and like how it resonates with like the molecules in your bourbon, So he has been an incredible resource, and we've developed a really good relationship with him. And that's how Speyside kind of became.
And just to follow up on that, why I respect Rob so much is because, keep in mind, this guy's doing like the massive projects for Diageo.
Right.
And it just happens Diageo's innovation centers in Connecticut. And he would always take time to stop in New Jersey and spend a day with us. Yeah, and I'm talking, we were doing peanuts at the time, like, hey, can I get like 5 barrels? And he didn't matter to him. He just had the passion for it. To this day, he's been a close friend of ours.
And these are, by definition for bourbon, these are virgin oak barrels you're using, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And and where is the aging actually happening?
Aging happens at MGP. Okay. So we'll age it all the way up to, usually about a couple months of when we'll dump it, and then we'll move it out of MGP and to wherever we're going to be bottling.
Got it. But by the way, did you guys leave your jobs? I mean, so Michael, you said you were in Silicon Valley, right? And Danny, you said that you were an engineer. So is Penelope now your full-time gig, or are you still doing other things?
Yeah,
we've been full-time for about 2 years each.
Wow, that's one heck of a transition. How has that gone for you? And
well, I used to work at Salesforce. I worked at Salesforce.com out in San Francisco, and like all my old colleagues are like, dude, you're in the bourbon business? Like I post something on LinkedIn. It used to be about CRM and, Marketing Cloud or whatever have you. And all of a sudden I'm posting like whiskey advocate articles. They're like, what do you do? Like, I learned a lot. And I mean, I worked in CRM, but one of the things Danny and I had always said, when you work in the Valley, it's like, I was doing CRM, but then I worked in HR tech. I've done all different, you're kind of just bounce around from vertical to vertical, and I think that gives you the confidence that like, I know nothing about the spirits industry, but maybe sometimes it needs a fresh set of eyes.
Right. And were you living in Silicon Valley, or were you living in Jersey when you were working for CRM?
I was living in New Jersey.
Okay, got it. And Danny, you two were also in Jersey the whole time?
Yep. So I've been here. And bourbon's like one big problem solving issue, and that's kind of related to engineering too. It's just trying to figure out the problem. Like, how do these barrels go together?
Got it. Well, speaking of how they go together, well, let's move on to the second expression for tonight, which is your barrel strength batch number 6. Tell us about it.
Well, barrel strength, I mean, we had our standard 4 grain, and so we started, again, we were going after a very, we were just kind of going after that basil hating consumer. That was our target demo. We started building great relationships with the community and building, just getting to know folks. And, we started getting a lot of requests for barrel strength. And Danny, at the time with batch 1, we literally, it was part of the same run as our 4-grain. We just said, let's try, a couple cases of barrel strength just to see it. And we really liked it. And then so starting from batch 2 on, we separated the projects and we treated them as 2 different work streams. And so kind of went from there.
Got it. And in terms of the mash bill, so again, it's the same. It's the same 4 grains. It's corn as the base, but then you also have the rye, and you have the wheat, and you have a little bit of malted barley, right?
Yeah, it's like Mike said. We used to blend our barrels together, and then before we cut down to 80 proof, we used to just pull off, whatever X amount of gallons, and that would be barrel strength, and then cut the rest of it down to 80. And then bottle. And then on the next batch, we figured out that like, just because you blend it, at barrel strength and it tastes good there, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to taste the best at 80. Like, you need to separate the barrels that you use for each and blend to what those barrels are telling you to blend to. Like a good example is, like our barrel strength, a lot of like the citrus notes come out best at the higher proof, right? And then on the 80 proof, a lot of like the vanillas and the sweetness come out, and you don't really get those citruses, or you don't, so at each proof we like really need to hone in and blend to what those proofs are.
Yeah, a lot of the people on here, we've talked a lot about the fact that we prefer barrel strength in many cases. That way we decide how much water goes into it. How much we want to cut down. And this has a nice punch, but it's very flavorful. Really, there's a lot coming through there. And actually, it's funny. Elizabeth McKay, what did she say in the chat here? This one woke me up. Which is great. Awesome. Barrel strength is good with a lot of G's. Yeah, more interesting. Yeah, this is great. This is enjoyable stuff. I'm really liking this one. So toasted series, okay. What do you mean by the toasted series? I assume you're talking about how the barrels are toasted, the charring on the barrels possibly. Tell us a little bit about what you mean by the toasted series as we go on to toasted with this, I guess, barrel 142, char number 1.
Danny, I'm just going to close my office doors because Penelope's crying real loud. Danny, take the first part of that. One sec. I feel bad. Sorry.
No worries. Danny, talk to us about toasted series barrel 142, char number 1.
Oh man, the toasted series. I mean, we started experimenting with different cast finishes and like different barrel types, and then you just say the word toasted out there these days, and people, their eyes get bright, and like, so it's definitely like a hot kind of buzzy kind of way of doing it. So we were like, we need to get this in a barrel. So what we ended up doing was experimenting with different chars and toasts. And the samples that you have tonight are part of an original, I'll call it an experiment, because honestly, we didn't know what char to use, what toast to use. So we kind of bought a bunch of them, and we put a blend in there, and we saw how it evolved. So it was actually a really interesting project, because we learned that it really takes a lot to balance between the char and the toast, because the toast, you're going to get that like campfire. I mean, the char, you're going to get like that campfire taste to it. And then that toast, you're going to get the vanillas out of the wood. Okay,
let me ask you, I want to stop you there for a second, because we got a good question in the chat. Can you talk about the difference between char and toast? I want to make sure that we understand what you're talking about.
So when a company chars a barrel, so this is done at the cooperage. When the barrel's made, the cooperage will char the barrel by actually putting flame to the wood until that wood actually catches on fire. And that's a char. And then a toast is where you put a flame to the barrel, but you don't put enough flame to actually light the wood on fire. So you're just kind of toasting the insides of the barrel.
That's a different, like when you're roasting a marshmallow. Sometimes you let the marshmallow burn, other times you just let it get brown.
And that is a great experiment to do, like where you can see the difference, because when something actually catches on fire, there's a different chemical reaction that occurs, and from that you're gonna get different flavors out of the wood.
You know, it's funny. A few of us have. We were talking about grills and smokers before. A few of us here also own fire pits. We're always out with our fire pits, and s'mores are a big deal at a fire pit. And you know, with the marshmallows, you know, and there's some people who are really married to making sure that marshmallow burns, and other people just like it a little bit brown. It's a big difference.
Exactly.
You know, that's great. So, so with respect to toasted versus charred, okay, how long are the juices staying in these barrels?
Well, that, and Danny, maybe a little tag team this one. So this was the fun part of it. I mean, we're still learning. So we had started with 4 barrels, 4 new oak barrels. It was a 1 char medium toast, 1 char heavy, 2 char heavy, 2 char medium. And that was the start of the program probably 2 months ago. And I think, Gil, at the time we were just starting to talk. So I think the ones we sent you were the 12-day. And it's so funny because these, we've been working with Rob and Speyside very, very closely on this, because the one thing we kept hearing is that these can turn, you know, and go south very, very quickly. And what's interesting is I think many of the toasted products out there are just new oak barrels with no char, just a toast. And so the sheer fact that we're doing a char, it's kind of an interesting anecdote. And so for us, we started with these 4. There's 2 of them that are still in the oak, which is now past 50 days. And we just now purchased the Char 3 medium heavy, Char 4 medium heavy, and Char 5 medium heavy to continue on that process.
And we want to get, you know, a lot of these different chars and toasts out there into the public, because it's kind of like we like to share what we go through or what we've gone through. Like even what we went through at that first day at MGP, like just sitting with a bunch of different mash bills and blending them together. You know, we have the line called Private Select, but that we did with that just to kind of let people see how the blend works. And then, you know, now that we're playing with different barrels, like we want people to see that too. Okay,
so you just mentioned something that is rather important to many of the people on here, and that was in my in my email to you guys before. Let's talk about getting this stuff to the public. Okay, so where is your stuff available? You know what, and you know, many of us here are in Chicago, but we do have people in other parts of the country. Tell us about the whole process of getting stuff out to the public, and where can people buy your products?
Yeah, so we are distributed in Illinois. So we're still new there. We launched there in December, so it's, you know, kind of slow and steady, starting to build up. But we're in a few binnies across the area. We just did a Private Select, which is kind of like our version of a single barrel program at Off Premise in Chicago, with Adam over there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Adam. Foremost Liquors, but we have a store locator. I mean, it's pretty up to date. We have coming from CRM. We actually have for a small company, we got a pretty good CRM system that's tied to our store locator. It's actually pretty up to date. I
would hope so. I really would hope that you know how to do the CRM.
We definitely have the most sophisticated CRM for any craft beverage company ever. It's like crazy, but we nice. I tied it to our store locator, so it's actually pretty up to date. It's on we usually ping it every 30 days. But no, we've got great distribution. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, what states? What states are you in?
So we're in 15 states right now, predominantly Northeast, but you know, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and then we have a few southern states like Georgia, and we're in Tennessee, and we have a great market share in Tennessee. We do well, and Colorado, and then a few in the Midwest, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Arkansas.
Must be fun with Pennsylvania and their state source system, huh?
It's funny, man. You know, it's interesting. Like, I think we've always kind of did this, like North Carolina, we're in North Carolina, but it's all special order. But Pennsylvania, we have a full listing, but we self-distribute there. There's no broker. I don't even know him. I mean, I got to know him. And we ship it direct to their distribution centers, and that's it.
So when you talk about the single barrel type products that you have, right? Obviously, there's a much more limited supply of those. You know, how do they get distributed? How do you decide who gets them and where they go?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is the toughest part of this industry right now, that we're there's parts of me that wish we never even embarked on a single barrel program. Maybe I think at times we got a little over our head, to be honest with you. We definitely did. Once you open that bag, it's, you can start ruining relationships. And one of the reasons for the Toasted series was we have a great relationship with MGP. And I'm sure, as you all know, I mean, MGP has good batches, but they also have bad batches. They're a large scale production distillery. I mean, so there's going to be good and bad. And, Danny and I are fortunate. We've just built up a great relationship with their master blender. He's single-handedly the closest to their batches than anyone else at that company. And so Private Select came from us getting a text message. And when he sends us a text, it's like, don't sit on them. And so we would, we'd get 20 barrels, and he's like, and so we use those as our driver. But in true form for who we're blenders. Like we're not, out of that 20, we had like 2 single barrels. And the only reason why we pulled them out was because they were offsetting the blends. And so our Private Select program that we rolled out, we did a little bit differently. I mean, it's not groundbreaking. Other folks have done this, but, we worked with partners in Illinois and New York and New Jersey, and just came up with just some various custom blends using.
But who actually gets the Private Select? Like where can the Private Select be found?
Well, so in Chicago and Illinois in particular, there's actually a bunch in Champaign. We have like a great market in Champaign, but up in Chicago, Foremost Liquors, there's a few that are going out to those stores. Gil, I could send you the exact list.
I'm curious because we've actually encountered this before. Okay, a few months ago, we had Herman Mihalik, from Dad's Hat Rye in Pennsylvania.
Great.
Okay, not far from you, just north of Philadelphia.
Awesome.
I'm from Philly myself originally, and
nice.
and he sent us a number of really good expressions, including some damn good single barrel stuff. And we were all asking him, where can we get it? And he said, sorry, it's only here at the distillery. Luckily, I was going to Philadelphia in a few weeks. Okay. So, I arranged to get a bunch of bottles from him, but it was one of those things where, again, you have a small distillery, limited distribution. And clearly, that's an issue with a lot of smaller producers, because every once in a while you get a single barrel or a small batch and it's so damn good, you'd like it to get out to people, but you have the challenge doing so.
We did that. I think one of the things we have a good partnership with Sealbox. And so we did a Private Select. We actually did a pretty large, in a pretty big, it's probably triple the size of a single barrel. So it was a 3-barrel Private Select using these barrels that were kind of in this program. And it was done with Breaking Bourbon. They kind of worked with us on the blend, and that is available on Sealbox. I mean, that was probably the closest we come to, to like something like a Bell Mead Honey, where they can, do that distillery only release and stuff like that. But we wouldn't want to have everyone come to Jersey. We'll save everybody for that.
Come on, it's not that. I'm from Philly. They're good parts of Jersey. They're definitely good parts of Jersey. Talk to me about Toasted Series Barrel 141. This is Char number 2. What are the differences between the one we just drank and the one that we're about to drink?
Danny, you want to take that?
Yeah. So the Char 2 versus the Char 1. The Char 1, you're going to get a little less of like that toasted note, but you're going to get a little more of the vanilla, because the char, basically the more you char the barrel, it's going to burn into that wood more. So say you toast a barrel and the toast penetrates the wood, say, a half an inch. Right. And then you do your char, you're burning off that toast. So if you do a heavier char, you're going to burn into that toasted layer more than the lighter char, if that makes sense. That toasted part of the barrel, that wood, is going to have the vanillins, like the vanillas, that are going to penetrate the bourbon. So you're going to, on the Char 2, you're going to get a little less of that.
And keep in mind, these are both heavy toasts. So at 12 days, I'll be honest here, this is what's so fascinating about this. At 12 days, the medium toast, so we had a 1 and 2 Char medium toast, they were not good. the heavy toast, but the heavy toast very quickly made an impact at 12 days.
Yeah.
Fast forward to now, 50 plus days, the best ones are the one char medium toast.
Really?
You start getting this beautiful balance between the char, the toast, and the bourbon. That's starting. It just, and you know, this is what Speyside said. Speyside did tell us, like, look for 90 days. That's like it's 90, 120. That's going to be your optimal finishing period at that lower char medium toast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting because from when we sent it to you to this, you know, right now I'm actually this is, you can see on the back of the label, we list the char and the toast on the labels, and I'm drinking the medium toast. And just you know, I got I just, you know, had to grab it real quick, but I just find it really interesting.
And just so you know, the same blend went into both of the samples that you're tasting. So we blended the barrels of bourbon. We came up with that blend, and then we took that blend and then put them into the 2 casks. And so there's no difference between the grains or the distillate that went into the barrels. It's all what the barrel did to the bourbon.
And Danny, I've seen a few things on here about rye. And what's interesting about this small batch barrel strength blend we did for this toasted series, this was a high corn wheat blend. It was very low rye, which is interesting.
And I got to both of them, I mean, these are delicious. You know, I tend to like higher proof stuff. So clearly, you know, the first one, the 4 grain, you know, was good, but I would definitely lean towards the other 3, you know, if I were to go, you know, to buy something. But these are delicious. They're spicy. They're good. I'm going to ask you just 2 more questions before I open it up to the group, because we're getting a lot of good questions here. Are there any plans for you guys to you know, to make your own juice, or are you guys going to continue working with MGP? Is the long-term plan to stick with MGP, or do you have, you know, dreams of opening your own actually distillery and producing your own juice?
Well, so it's a great question. So one of the things, you know, true to who we really want to continue refining our blending and bottling craft. And so what we did, I mean, we started getting requests middle of the year during summertime about private barrels or single barrel, this and that. I mean, it was coming in. It wasn't even because who we are. It's just, I think people wanted barrels. That's where the market was going. And it just turned out we have a warehouse in New Jersey, but it used to be an old alcohol chemical factory. So it's got, you know, fire retardant wiring, and it's actually was set up to really be quickly to get a DSP. Danny and I fast tracked it during the summer of last year. We said, why don't we, at the very least, let's set up capacity, not for distillation, but for blending and bottling. And so in the fall, we did obtain our DSP in New Jersey. We actually opened the facility in April. And I think in the last 45 days, we've done like 9,000 bottles in the first 45 days.
Yeah.
Wow. So how exciting is that for you?
We got a lot of tanks, a lot of totes. No column stills or anything like that. We're a tote factory, but it's fun. And, you know, it's, there's no tasting room. I mean, we have people come by, but it's a manufacturing line. It's a rectifying and, you know, bottling permit. It's not a craft distillery. And that's really what we wanted. That's more true to who we are. And I'll be honest with you, MGP, to me, I really like MGP.
Look,
it's really damn good.
Look, we can talk about sourcing versus not sourcing all the time. Some people knock it. Other people say if what's in the bottle is good, it doesn't matter. You know, I was at a great tasting with the people from Redemption a few years ago. Yeah. And, you know, and the guy actually showed up with a map of different rooms in MGP showing, you know, the different levels of the barrels and the differences in temperatures and humidity levels. It was a fascinating presentation, you know, and he talked about how he works with them, you know, to come up with something that is worthy of being bottled by them. So, you know, we don't, you know, really, with respect to this, we're not going to judge one way or the other. If we like it, it's good. You know, we're happy with it. By the way, where in Jersey are you guys located?
We're right outside of Manhattan, Roselle.
Okay.
So about 15 minutes outside of New York City.
Okay. All right, cool. Because, you know, we were talking with Widow Jane a few weeks ago, you know, out of Brooklyn, you know, and she was talking about sourcing and how, you know, they're working on thinking about starting to do their own stuff too. And it's always interesting because if you're working with really good distilleries that are giving you good product already, You know, that's difficult to make that transition to starting to produce your own stuff.
Well,
So
the
what
way
I
I
wanted,
look at it too, though, I look at it really simply. We just took the fast track. Like, if we start making our own stuff, eventually I'm going to have to go to a contract distiller anyway.
right.
Like Tito's isn't making all that vodka. MGP's making that. They're not aviation gin. I mean, that's the thing. So I always tell Danny, I said, well, we just shortcut that process.
No, I get it.
I mean, honestly, if we put a still in,
That's
it
true,
would be like it would be to hobby around with, at least for me. I mean, I would love to just hobby around with it for a little while, but you know, big plans, I don't know.
Just being able to bottle and blend on our own was a big step. The
Mhm.
second step is we do want to do a custom mash. We talking to Bardstown. We're actually transitioning a lot of our blending and bottling the larger scale to Bardstown Bourbon Company in August.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing our 4 grain and our barrel strength batches there, just because we can't, that capacity can't do that in house. And we're all talking to them about some custom mashes. Like, it'd be interesting to see what our 4 grain would be as a custom distillate, but
that's great. No, I love it. And, you know, I don't want to, I want to make sure other people get a chance here to ask questions. So Eric, do you have any particular questions for Daniel or Michael?
Yeah. So with the toasted series, you were mentioning that, you know, the ones that we got were 12 day and you've had some 30 and you said up to 50. How are you seeing them change over time? And I guess the follow-up question is, how are you going to take these learnings and put them back into your regular lines?
That's a great question.
Yeah. So, well, one, we're taking careful notes along the way, so we know exactly the blend that we put into the barrels. Obviously we know the chars and the toasts of each of the barrels, and then we're pulling samples basically every 2 days in the beginning, and then maybe every 5 after that, and taking notes along the way in that process. I mean, so that was the first group of barrels, and that's 2 of the barrels that you're tasting now. So we ordered another 16 barrels. Now we're going to scale it up a little, right? So we're going to try some of the same chars and toasts, but then we also ordered different chars and toasts. We ordered 5 chars and 4 chars, or 5 and 3, and then medium heavy toast still. So we're kind of expanding the experiment out a little more to track it. Like, one thing I want to do in the next batch is adjust the blend that goes into the barrels, and maybe not, I guess we thought, like, maybe if we did a little more of a sweeter blend instead of like a spicier rye blend, maybe the sweetness would be offset, by the char, and then the vanillas would work really well with the sweetness or the corn of the blend. So we might change up the blend a little in the next wave. I mean, we're just trying to, it's like a never ending quest to find the perfect kind of balance between all of this.
And we're trying to do it, we got to do it on limited budget. I mean, that's, it's not like that's the tricky part. We could keep going and going in terms of R&D and be like, we have some 95.5 rye barrels, and, I know Nulu and some folks are using that 95.5 rye from MGP, and maybe that's the right balance. And I think it's, I don't know, I'm hoping part of it's luck. Maybe we got luck on our side. We'll find the perfect balance.
There's nothing wrong with luck. Nothing wrong with luck.
Yeah, no.
Whatever works for you. So we have other people who have questions to ask, and I want to remind everybody that the best way to ask questions, because we're trying to manage a bunch of people here, you go to the reactions button at the bottom and you click raise hand. First, we're going to have Ariel Eisenberg, then Todd Coe, and then Paul Barron. So Ariel, please unmute and ask your question.
Well, first of all, thanks for being here, guys, and also thank you for the very generous samples. Definitely the fullest sample bottles we've had thus far. Very tasty stuff. Question for you about the science of the char versus the toast. So the char is actually the flame getting into the wood, right? And so does the char number refer to the depth of penetration of the char? Like a char number 1 doesn't penetrate as deeply into the wood as a char number 2.
So how, from how I understood it was combination of the heat and the depth.
Okay. And
It's
so,
like the duration
Okay.
of flame.
okay. And so how does that work with the toast though? Because if something's already been charred, then you've already altered the structure of the material itself. So toasting it, then
So the
what would that do to the char?
I know where you're going with that.
As I understand that the toast is done first, and
Okay.
this is from our encyclopedia from Speyside.
Wish I had Rob here right now. Save me on this question.
Yeah, so I'm reiterating what he explained. The toast is done first, and then the char is done, because the toast will just heat the wood up and give it that toasted factor, and that'll go deeper into the wood, and then the char goes on after, and that's why like a heavier char after a toast will kind of burn into the toast of the barrel.
Exactly.
And like we've taken staves that have been charred and toast and taken like a cross section of them, and you'll see like it's black, down maybe a half an inch, but then a quarter inch of it is like alligator, and that alligator is that's the char part of it.
Well, and what's interesting, and there also is what we do run into, and we're starting to maybe see it a little bit. We haven't quite seen it yet, but this is from Rob in Speyside, is that there's a point in which the char and the toast kind of counterbalance each other out to exactly what you were kind of getting at earlier. And so that's the other thing that you can maybe find that right balance of char, toast, and bourbon, but there's also a point where the char might be too heavy, and the toast just has no impact. So I don't know. There's just like a couple of little things like that.
Great.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
All right, Todd, if you could please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So I did some poking around on your website before coming on. I do my research, I do my reading, and I'm curious about the cocktails section. I'm a sort of a mixologist. I like a good cocktail. I'm wondering who's the mixologist on your team? How are you coming up with these recipes?
Nobody here.
Yeah.
My wife came up with one cocktail, and the rest of them, most of our cocktails, I usually credit a bartender from one of our customers.
There's some good looking stuff on
That's
there.
really it, because I actually drink it. We drink neat. I mean, I do love an old fashioned. I love a Manhattan, and I know how to make them. But when it comes to that, a lot of that is just crowdsourced from customers, like the New Jersey, Bartenders Guild. Just folks that have become friends of ours since we started it.
Very cool. I always find it precious when a craft distiller or bottler doesn't think their stuff is too precious to put in a cocktail. Like, you have to drink it neat because it's so special. I like that approach, that however the consumer wants to taste your stuff, you're open to it, you encourage it. That's very cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, that's that, of course.
Very good. Great question, Todd. All right, so Paul, if you could please unmute and ask your question.
It's my favorite part of the show when I get to unmute. This is fantastic.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble.
All right, so real simple question on this one. By working so closely with MGP, is there anything in particular that you guys have the option of changing up or editing or selecting that maybe some other people don't, that you find important or special? Now, I know you said pursuing mash bills in the future, so that was going to be part of the question, but you answered that part. But is there anything else, like, custom barrel entry, proof, anything like that, that you guys both find important and get to do because of the close relationship that maybe others don't have the option to?
Danny, maybe I'll say my piece, Danny, then you could say yours, because we kind of take a different lens on it.
Yeah, I mean, I know Mike is constantly like diving into MGP, like finding, talking to them, finding what they have, and he's always like wanting to use different mash bills, sometimes, just to have them or experiment with them, especially experiment. So, I mean, Definitely, and then I'll let Mike take the rest of that.
Well, no, I think if there's like a custom barrel proof, I mean, look, you can try to find it in their inventory, but their inventory's short up. I mean, a lot of their juice has been bought up. They don't, I mean, they have stuff, I mean, but they're not as, even from when we started looking at barrels for the first time in 2018, the dynamic of what's available is really different from 2018 to now. I mean, like completely different. The 45 wheat's non-existent. We had to work on an agreement with MGP to just shore up aged barrel inventory. And they were fortunate enough to do that with us, where we don't have to put up the capital to buy barrels, so there were some really things. I think they did it with us and Smoke Wagon, and that was it. So I think with MGP, there's custom mashes. Like we could call them tomorrow and be like, I want a 4-grain. I want to do 130 custom barrel entry, or the barrel entry proof of 135. I mean, you could do whatever you want. There's minimums, and then there's a production timeline. So that's no question at all. For us, we haven't even gotten there yet. So we're thinking about that. That's what I was saying, or alluding to earlier. But what's amazing is MGP's done all of this experimental stuff. So, we just, a great example is 95.5 wheated whiskey is really popular right now. There's 19 barrels of the original experimental wheated whiskey, 9-year-old. And Danny and I have them. And each one of them, there's buckets of 5, and they all have different custom chars, and not toast, but the heads and staves all have different custom chars on each of them. And they're really interesting. And we'll probably, I don't know, maybe we'll single barrel them. Maybe we'll just release them in buckets to because it kind of goes along with what we're doing. But that was something that, to me, that's MGP has it. I think it's truthfully, it's a relationship thing. If they like you, like, you'll get access to their inventory. I think that's what it comes down to the most.
That's fascinating, because obviously, so many people have access to them.
Yeah.
And getting something special is obviously it's a big deal. So that's a good thing. Actually, this reminds me a little bit of conversation we had with Joshua Hatton and Jason Johnstone Yellen from Single Cask Nation back in the fall. They bottle a lot of single casks from many different distilleries around the world. And one of the questions that we asked was, how do you know when you found something, that's worthy of being bottled by you? And Jason's answer was great. He said, we keep going back to it.
Yeah.
It's like when they're at a distillery and they're tasting all these things, and they like taste all these bottles, and I was like, let's go back to that one. I really like that one. And that's it's just you can't put your finger on it. He just gave the perfect answer. We keep going back to it. It's like, wow, that's just the perfect answer. Michael Applebaum, your hand is up. Please unmute.
Yeah. So to, I guess, further the MGP question, since you are barreling and warehousing there, have you been able to kind of find an exclusive spot to maintain consistency that you like, or are you jumping around where you store it there? Because you mentioned Smoke Wagon, and I read about them and how they came across a product they liked and said, we want everything right here. Are you doing something similar, or what do you do for your barometer for your consistency?
No, that doesn't exist. There's no like, I want MGP, I want everything on the 6th floor, Calvin Cooperage, warehouse G. No, that's all BS.
Okay.
You get what you get, and what you have to look at is you got to look at the batch. So I don't know, Danny, I'll let you chime in because I know you're very, very close to this, but we're going to have different things. I mean, we have preferential warehouses, but it's a big publicly traded company that's got a lot of moving parts. Even if I did a custom mash bill, my barrels, if I could ask for a certain level 4, it's going to go where there's an open slot. That's just kind of how it works. So, yeah, I think we look at that as part of batches we're getting. But I'll be honest with you, I'd say half of them are from warehouses that weren't in that sweet spot, and they came out great. So, I don't know, Danny, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we use specific mash bills, and with the amount of warehouses they have, if there's open space, they fill it with whatever is coming out of the still that day. So we although we can choose different batches from different warehouses. And sometimes we do, if we see, that a mash bill is in a certain warehouse that we like, we might grab it or, ask for a sample of the batch. But like Mike said, it really comes batch over batch is different. It's way different. I mean, the way something is distilled, the way it's distilled is just as important, I think. And this is like a big debate, I guess, about people in whiskey in general is, what's more important, the aging or the distillation. I think they're both important, and we've seen that in the way different batches taste. So I think it's a combination of just tasting the batches, finding the batches that are right, and then location helps, but it's not always exact. I've had 2 barrels that are right next to each other, and the same distillate went in it, and they're totally different. One is like a lights out single barrel, and the other one is it's okay.
But Danny, the one thing I started to pick up on my palate, which I wasn't able, I could tell if they burned that batch.
Yeah.
I could tell it. I think that's probably the number one thing I'll see from MGP if it's burnt. And I think that, I don't know if that has a huge impact on the aging, but that's one thing that I try to steer away from.
Absolutely. It's like baking a cake. If you ever have like that burnt flour taste, like it's like an overcooked cake sometimes. And it's like, oh, that's not for us. Thanks, guys. You
always know that because we get offered these rye barrels that are like insanely good prices. So then I'll go, give me the batch code. And I'm like, I'll act like I'm really interested. Get the batch code. I'll send it to the master blender. And I'm like, what's up with this batch? He's like, no.
Well, at least you're getting honesty.
Too good to buy. It's not good.
Right. I mean, but the honesty is important, right? I mean, they want to maintain a good relationship with you too. It goes both ways.
But also someone's going to buy that batch and it will go into market.
Right. But it could also be blended into something else though, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Great how it's blended in for sure.
How many batches do you go through before you find ones you like?
It was so much I had Danny take over that process.
Yeah, I mean, like preparing for a batch, it's exhausting because you have to get enough time beforehand to basically figure out the batches that we like. And then that's step one. And then we have those barrels, and then once they're in our possession, then we can sample through every single barrel of those batches, and then we profile them into like what they would go best in. Like, are they best for 80 proof? Are they best for our barrel strength? Maybe they're good for experimental. Maybe they're single barrels, which is a small percentage of all that. So
what size barrels are you usually working with?
Size 53.
Okay. Got it. And do you ever do anything smaller just for experimental purposes, like a 30?
Yeah, we were experimenting with like 55 liter like wine casks, like with our finishing and stuff. Try to do it at like a smaller scale just to accelerate the extraction time, and then also because we don't want to waste 53 gallons of bourbon on the experiment.
No, yeah, definitely not. That's a lot of juice. You don't want to mess that up.
We did this really good one. 55 liters comes out to about 10 6-packs, more or less, like maybe 60 bottles. And we did this one on 55 liters of a really, really good PX. And that was 90 days in PX. And then we kicked it over to a 55 liter cognac for 60 days. And it was really good.
Wow, that must have been fun, to play with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
that is cool.
There's just so many things you can do. It's just endless.
But this goes back to like for us, like we're so like this is all using those same 3 mashes from MGP.
Right.
Like we got a lot going on just with that. And so I think we're still in this we always look at this as a marathon, and we're still in this exploratory phase of just this kind of blend that we're dabbling in. And I don't know, we're having fun just staying hyper focused in this arena of this like 4-grain, this 3 bourbon mash blend that, it's hard enough trying to figure this out. Let alone
look, I got to tell you, somehow or another it's worked. Okay. Because from the comments, people are really enjoying this stuff. They're having a great time. They love the samples that you've provided to us, which is awesome. I just have one last question before we wrap it up and go to the after party. Can you tell us a little bit about how COVID has affected your business? Because that's a big deal for a lot of the distilleries, especially the places where they have visitors. That's not really as much of an issue for you guys, but how has COVID affected your business?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I'll never forget it back in March when it really started to hit the restrictions and up in New Jersey. I mean, we were always we were more of a retail, an off-premise based business, simply because trying to wrap our head around selling into like the 3-tier system was a little complicated. Just, bars and restaurants is a different sales cycle versus off-prem. And we always went down the route of retail, like heavily, like probably 80-20. And so we became very reliant on in-store tastings when in 2019 and, up till the early part of, Danny and I single-handedly, we broke the New Jersey state record for most in-store tastings personally. My wife still isn't talking to me, but we did a lot of in-store tastings. But I kept us close to the consumers. We got a lot of good feedback. We actually captured all that data. I actually have all that data, like from every in-store tasting we've done, like what bottle they were going to buy versus what they took. And maybe eventually we'll be able to use it. But for us, that was my biggest fear. When we shut off that tasting engine, I think that was our first aha moment. Like, whoa, like no tastings, we're going to be out of business in like a month. And to see that there was still orders coming through without having to be so heavily reliant on those in-store tastings gave us some optimism. And, one of the things I think partly we came from a tech background. Danny and I had that online infrastructure set up from the get-go. Flaviar is one of our biggest customers. By far. And we had a call with them today, and it's funny because I'll talk to a lot of folks that are just trying to break into Flaviar. And I think it was just, we didn't have any distribution. I was like, I might as well sell it online or try to sell it online or something like that. And it kind of, it's, well,
what's funny is that,
to say the least.
Well, what's funny is that your answer is also the same answer as to why we are here today doing this. Okay. For me, because a lot of the people on here, we've been going to whiskey tastings for over 15 years together. Some of us for about 20 years, and, the lockdown started right before Whiskey Week here in Chicago. Okay. And Whiskey Week here in Chicago, it's a huge deal. It's a week of Whiskey Fest, but leading up to Whiskey Fest, Chicago is such a great whiskey town that there are events every night. And as a recent empty nester, that was the first year that I had something planned for every single night. Okay. And I was almost in tears. It was that bad. Okay. It's like I had so many plans for that week. I had already told my assistant, do not plan to see me for a week. That's what it was going to be like. And then the rug was just taken out. Okay. And I talked to Eric, and, I'm very, very fortunate that I have a friend like Eric who not only loves whiskey, but also, like you guys, he's a CRM guy. Okay. You guys can have conversations that I would not understand. And thank God, Eric was a person whom I approached to start this, because the things he's done, I just could not do them. He speaks your language. I do not speak that language. But we are together because of the fact that COVID took away the interpersonal experience. Okay. That experience that you're talking about being at a table, handing somebody a drink, seeing how they experience it, talking with them about it. That's something we all miss and we can't wait to get back to. But in the meantime, we've created a little bit of a community here. We've met people like Ted, who introduced us to people like you, who then provide us with great samples so that we can talk with you and learn about it. And it's been one hell of a ride. And so what I'd like right now, what I'd like everybody to do is, if you are so inclined, put another dram in one of your glasses. I keep going back to Toasted Series. I go Char number 1. I keep going back to Char number 1. That without a doubt is my favorite here. I'd like everybody to unmute. Okay, everybody, please unmute yourselves. Take a second, please unmute. And everybody, please join me in saying cheers and thank you to Michael and Daniel from Penelope.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
This was really
Yummy.
wonderful. We had a
Number
great
2.
time. Michael, Daniel, do you have any final words for us?
For me, I just want to thank Ted for setting this up. Ted's I mean, we got to, so it's funny going back to these types of events. So Ted and I met at a virtual tasting with Elixir Spirits from T over at out down south in Franklin, Tennessee. And Ted's been a partner and part of our team since we met. And I learned more about whiskey from Ted than I do most folks. And I thank you for setting this up, and thank you guys for all letting us join and share our story. This was really awesome. And I don't know, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, it's our pleasure. Thank you very much. Daniel, anything?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Like you said, COVID has let us do a lot of these tastings, and we really love it. Especially like your group tonight, like was so interactive, and the questions.
Best questions.
Yeah, I mean the questions were great, and we just love, you know, kind of chatting, talking whiskey with you all.
Well, that is a perfect way to end it. So again, cheers. Thank you. Eric,